Go for it.
Cool. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Frances Klingenberger with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. And on behalf of the Chamber and the Bakersfield Young Professionals, I would like to invite you all to our last webinar in our BYP Virtual Summit series. Over the last few months, we've covered a range of topics and had inspiring speakers and a lot of motivational messages. So we're happy to be with you this morning, and I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Hillary Haynes, to go over some Zoom etiquette.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hillary with the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. So happy you could join us this morning. I'd like to thank our series sponsors for supporting this program so that we were able to deliver these free weekly webinars since mid-August. So a huge thank you goes to Strata Credit Union, Comprehensive Blood and Cancer Center, and Kearney's Business Technology Center. And then I just want to let everyone know that this session is being recorded because we will upload it to the Chamber's YouTube channel for those who were unable to make it today. Or if you want to rewatch it, if you have a question, we encourage you to ask our panelists live. And I'm sure that they'll share their contact information with you in the chat if you want to go back and ask some questions to them. But we ask that everyone go on mute unless you're speaking. We want this to be an engaging session, so you can either type your questions in the chat or unmute yourself, ask the question. And then Frances, back to you.
Thanks, Hillary. I'd like to introduce our speakers for this morning. We have Michael Roberts with Small Business Celebrations, Megan Cardenas from Bitwise Industries, and JP Lake from KITE and Kern Venture Group. So I will turn it over to you, Michael, to introduce yourself and get us started.
Good morning. My name is Michael Roberts. I am the host of Small Business Celebration, Kern County's #1 small business program, where we interview small businesses, small business owners, and those that run them, CEOs, CFOs, COOs, so that you can learn something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business. As a selfish plug, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or on YouTube. And in a moment here, I'll go ahead and put in the show notes here or in the chat the YouTube channel, so that if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead and subscribe, which we encourage you to do. Our sponsors obviously like that very much, but also so do our guests. They like to see how many people are watching our conversations. And this whole program started as a Toastmasters project, advanced level Toastmasters project here in Bakersfield. And what started out as me getting to know 5 of the business owners that I knew locally and ask them a bunch of questions and then present the best one to my Toastmasters club became a phenomenon unto itself, much to my surprise. And now here we are 103 episodes later. And when you calculate that out as 1 episode every single week, that's almost 2 years worth of content. And in fact, one of our guests on our panel today, the great JP Lake, was episode number 63. So I encourage you to go ahead and go to smallbusinesscelebration.com and click on our programs and scroll down to episode 63. And you can learn some things about JP Lake as well as Kern Venture Group that can definitely help your business. And I hope that's a great synopsis for you there, Hillary or Frances. And what else would you like me to fire away and rattle on about this morning?
Did you want to share, I know you had talked about sharing some of the stories about your guests that you've had on the show. What two maybe stick out the most to you?
Well, we've got our guest this week, which is Meredith Bell, and she is a very unique person in a lot of different ways. And when I say unique, I don't necessarily mean bad unique either. She is a millennial, oh heaven forbid, who started her career out in the food and beverage business and was doing very well. She was working in New York and LA and Hollywood and doing all those kinds of great things. But she found that she wasn't being personally fulfilled. She discovered that she wanted to be able to do more. And so she went and became a farmer, an organic farmer. And her first client was Jessica Pounds, the owner of Moo Creamery. And when Jessica tried the poultry that Meredith had provided her, she thought it was absolutely out of sight. And the conversation we have this week is multifaceted. One is to more than prove that you can be a millennial, you can be a business owner, and successful at the same time, but also what it takes to get a brand new business off the ground and make it profitable with the stumbles, the trips, the falls, the challenges, including having a flood come in and completely wipe out your business. How do you recover from something like that if you're a farmer? Well, Meredith goes through and she tells us how she overcame that and actually developed a stronger business from that experience. And she's also a great entertaining person to watch. And she's also one of these kinds of people that it's all in the subtext. And so there's many people that have been listening to the program and have been watching the program that's there and go, wait a minute, what just happened there? And so she's great fun. Last week's guest is Callie Jenkins. And if you don't know Callie Jenkins, she owns Poise Pilates and Bar. And she is a very remarkable woman because not only is she also a millennial, but she was one of these people that she started a Pilates studio and things were going well. And she built it literally from the ground up by literally going around and giving people leaflets and saying, here, come to my business and we'll have a great time. And she built up this very large, successful business. Then COVID hit. And it's really hard to have a Pilates business when you can't be near anybody. And she did something remarkable by making her entire business go online. And she couldn't do it by herself. And she goes through and talks about in the episode how she reached out to the community, how she reached out to other fellow business owners, small business owners, how she actually expanded her network of friends and contacts and developed an online business that is incredibly successful, very strong. And of course, she's very much looking forward to being able to let patrons back into her studio. But she goes through and she talks about how she took a business that was completely shut down. Remember, she had a non-essential business, something that a lot of business owners face, and a business that was very interactive with people, and how she was able to take that business and being able to shift it online and being able to do it very successful so that when we come out of COVID, she knows that she's going to have this very large, very active, very interactive online presence, but it'll also be coupled with having business people actually coming into the studio itself. And she also talks about how she made those contacts within the business community. I'm not going to give it away, but it's a great one. And it's one that if you fall asleep at the wheel, you'll miss, but it's big. And finally, 3 weeks ago, we had our 100th episode, and it was a milestone episode. And I actually recorded the guest, which is Morgan Clayton. And I had recorded our conversation back in October, and it was so good, I pushed it back to episode 100. And Morgan Clayton, if you don't know who he is a fixture in this community. I know JP and Morgan are good friends, and Kern Venture Group is very lucky to have Morgan Clayton involved with Kern Venture Group. And Morgan gives a tremendous wealth of knowledge in our conversation, because here is a man who was born in Fresno, that started his business literally out of the trunk of his car. He started selling security systems out of the trunk of his car. And he grew, he developed, he did not have any serious schooling or he didn't go to college, he didn't have any postgraduate work, but he developed his business based on people. and he built his business on execution. And he also built his business on systematization of doing business and work well. And it's a great interview. In fact, it's so great. I could have spent 3 hours of our conversation and put it up online, but we only have a half an hour format for our program. So on his particular episode, we actually have some bonus material at the very end after all the credits are over that you definitely don't want to miss. And so this is just a sampling of the kinds of people we have on Small Business Celebration. We like to strike a tone of people's stories, how they grew, how they developed, lessons that they learned, and also to let you know that in the business community, it can feel lonely at times. It can feel like, you know, you're king or queen of the hill and you're the only one left in charge, and it gets kind of lonely. And it's really nice to hear these stories from their own personal perspectives, the things that they've learned, the lessons that they've had, as well as the advice that they give, where you don't want to go ahead and step on that landmine, you want to step on that stone instead. And that's what the whole program is about. And we have a really good time week after week after week, bringing real small business owners who've actually been through the trenches and aren't sitting there going through and pontificating on something, on a book they may have written, or lots and lots of theory. No, these are people who actually had to make payroll. These are the people that have gotten these very curious letters from the Internal Revenue Service that they don't understand. These are the people that have actually lived it and have done it well. And that's what we do here on Small Business Celebration. Hillary, Francis, anybody?
Thanks, Michael. Well, you are obviously surrounded by a lot of great business owners and people with that entrepreneurial mindset. So for those who are kind of new to this or just have an idea, maybe could you talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with other people that think in a similar way and kind of how you can find that group?
Sure. There's an oft overused saying by Jim Rohn, who said, you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And that's a phrase some people will banter back and forth or disagree or whatnot. But the reality is it's true. And especially in this day and age, there's the old saying that it's not what you know, but who you know. And for a long time, that was very true. But in this economy today, the way social media is, the way we have social distancing, the way we have the interactions with people, the real quote has shifted to, it's not what you know, but who knows you. And that's where going on forums like this one's important. This is where developing contacts and relationships, like with Megan and with JP, like with all the guests that I have on the program. A lot of these people, they're more than willing to help and talk and chat with you if you just simply pick up the phone and call them. I know it's a shocking thought, but you know, your mobile device can be your biggest tool. And in this day of an age of COVID, Zoom is a very powerful tool. And if you can't meet somebody in person, set up a time to talk with them via Zoom. You need to reach out and build those relationships. And it's okay to admit that you have a problem. For example, last week, I was sitting there thinking, okay, we're starting to put together our guest list for the end of December and into January. And I'm looking for a particular guest that can reach these kind of people, that can answer these kinds of questions I keep getting from Visionary Nation, because we're very active on social media, especially on LinkedIn. And I reached out to a couple past guests that I had, and they go, oh, well, you need to call this person. And that's how it starts. It's really that simple. I had no idea who JP Lake was until I was speaking to some former guests that we had, and they said, well, you need to talk to JP Lake. He'd be a great guest on the program. So I picked up the phone, gave him a call, and JP said, sure, I'll talk to you. And that's how he got on the program. And your business is no different. Whatever your business is, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, is be willing to do some of the scariest things known to man or mankind or personkind or whatever your preference is. Actually pick up the phone, make a Zoom call, and reach out to somebody, because you would actually be surprised on how helpful people are willing to be if you're forthright and say, hey, I can't do this alone. I need your help.
Thanks, Michael. JP, did you want to share more of your background, and then also tell us, for those who may not know, like Kern Venture Group and KITE, those organizations, those businesses that you have co-founded?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Francis and BYP for putting this on today. And so my name is John Paul Lake. I go by JP for short, and I am the co-founder and co-managing partner of Kern Venture Group, which is the first angel investment fund here in Kern County. So we invest in startup companies in the region and also outside of the region, but we're always looking at them through the angle of, are they doing something that can positively benefit Kern County and the Central Valley? And so that's one of the many things that I do. Another thing that I'm engaged in is KITE, which is the Kern Initiative for Talent and Entrepreneurship. It is a relatively new effort and initiative that is a joint venture between my foundation, the Seed Core Foundation, which my wife and I started, and KEDC, the Kern Economic Development Corporation. And the goal of KITE is to help galvanize our community around entrepreneurship, with an aim long-term towards building a better ecosystem here to support entrepreneurs and founders. So today I'd really like to speak from a KITE perspective. And, I really agree with several of things that Michael has shared. And I would say the biggest one really is, if you've got an idea about starting a new company, some new business or product or service, you've got to share your idea with other people. Like Michael was saying, you've got to pick up the phone, you've got to get out there and network. And I'd love to maybe dive into that too, but I'll pause there just as my intro. I know we also want to get Megan from Bitwise here into the conversation.
Well, thank you. Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Cardenas, and I work for Bitwise Industries. I'm the community catalyst, so it's my job to facilitate and foster the community of Bitwise, particularly once we have our co-working location set up, but also just to get our community jazzed about Bitwise and who we are and what we do. And if you're curious what we do, we are a tech ecosystem that activates the potential, like local potential, to lift up underdog cities. And so there's three components to Bitwise. We have workforce, we have infrastructure, and we have industry. And the way we develop the workforce is through Geekwise Academy. This is our school, basically, that teaches people how to code. And then once you complete coursework with Geekwise, we take the very best from Geekwise Academy and hire them. Basically, we do paid internships called a cohort under our custom software company, and they can then further develop their skills. And some of those people in the cohort come to work for Bitwise. Some of them launch their own businesses, and then some of them take this experience into other industries in the local community, because the idea is to cultivate the talent that we have here, rather than having a person believe that these new skills that they now have to take somewhere else, right? Like, we want to grow our local community, and we want to lift up what's happening here in hopes that people make this place better and help it thrive. And for our infrastructure portion, we lease state-of-the-art space to local businesses, And we also we'll have a co-working space there, so shared office space. And we provide open to the public areas, event space, and we're going to have a tap room and eventually a cafe, and where people from all over this city and all different industries can gather and network and connect. And then our industry is our custom software portion, Shift 3 Technologies, where, like I said, they take the very best from GeekWise Academy, give them their start, and then also create, software solutions for anybody who needs it, with an emphasis again on building local community. So I'm super happy to be here. What we do at Bitwise sort of naturally facilitates entrepreneurship, because we've already talked about networking, how important that is. And within the Bitwise ecosystem, there are people at all different levels with all different types of experience who are willing to share and collaborate, and facilitate your new ideas. And so I'm happy to, again, we can dig into more specific questions, but that's Bitwise in a nutshell. And I'm so happy that we are going to have Bitwise here in Bakersfield.
Thank you, Megan. It's exciting. I've been coming into the chamber office, and we're just right across the street, seeing all the progress that's happening. Do you have a timeline, a rough timeline now of when?
Sure. So what we're looking at now is that the construction itself, like the bones, will be done the end of November. And then once that the walls are up and the windows are up, then our building team comes in and makes it look Bitwise. So we'll be working with, local artists for artwork, murals, and we'll, get the furniture in, light fixtures, all the things that make it look and feel like a Bitwise space. And so that will happen at least through the end of January. And then after that, in the spring, we'll start, I believe, opening up for the people who are leasing offices to come in. And yeah, I think we're optimistically looking at a late spring, early summer grand opening. So fingers crossed, who knows, things change daily here in this global pandemic era. So our hope, we are optimistic for late spring, early summer.
Awesome. Well, we're really excited. It looks like we have a question. Josh.
Sorry, I know there's a raise your hand button. I'm not familiar with Zoom. Hi, Megan. I'm Josh. I'm not Lucia. I'm using one of my employees' profiles. She does this for schoolwork. So how do I get who do I want to get a hold of, or how do I get a hold of somebody? Because we can help with that second step. The local artist things and stuff. There's some really cool stuff we just started getting into. And
sure. I'm going to put my contact info in the chat box right now.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Josh. JP, did you want to share more about what you had talked about in the beginning, KITE, building those relationships, like maybe how people can get involved?
Yeah, maybe I'll start just with elaborating on why it's important to share your idea with others. Sometimes I meet entrepreneurs who are really afraid to kind of like share what they think is the secret sauce about their idea or their company. And the reality is that just having the idea is not enough. The difference between two people who both have great ideas and one of them makes it into a successful company and one of them doesn't, it's all about the execution and the work ethic and the passion. There's only one of you. And if you are the right person who believes in that idea so much, then you're the only person who's going to stay dedicated and focused on it and work on it. And that's why, entrepreneurs are such amazing people, is because they believe in something when sometimes other people don't believe in it. Don't be afraid to share your idea. That's the first thing I would want to encourage people with. The second thing is that sharing your ideas with others helps you kind of form that idea and mold it and craft it and find out, there might be things you're not thinking about. And, that constructive criticism or feedback is really, really valuable. That's an indicator of what the marketplace might be thinking, potential customers, investors, partners. That's all valuable input. Doesn't mean that you need to follow all of it, but it at least helps you be aware of what other people see, good and bad, about your idea. And then I also want to reiterate something that Michael said about, and he's very good about doing this with the Small Business Celebration, is every time you talk to somebody, you always need to finish that conversation with asking for that next introduction. Ask them, is there someone else who you think I should speak to? Is there someone else who could help me with, finding a supplier or finding an investor or whatever it is that you're looking for? And you will be amazed at how fast you can network your way into meetings that will really catapult your business to the next level. And I would say actually that one of the co-founders of Bitwise, Jake Soberall, is phenomenal at this. That's how I got involved with Bitwise early on. I met Jake through an introduction from Austin Smith here in town. And Irma's also very good at this, but Jake is really the pro at guerrilla networking, right? You just swing from one connection to the next. If you imagine a monkey swinging through the jungle, it's going from tree to tree to tree, and before you know it, you're on the complete other end of the jungle. So sharing ideas and networking is really, really important. It's the first place to start, I think. And a place like Bitwise in our town is going to be so important because it will have that physical space that just allows for those unplanned, spontaneous connections that are also helpful, the ones that you can't just ask for, but that are just serendipitous.
And it looks like we have a question. Kathy, did you want to ask it live? Oh,
there you go. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. So I think it's really a positive thing, excuse me, that we have several new members that have started businesses since COVID kind of hit us. So some of that's because they got extra money and then they use that as their own personal seed money. We also have people that are selling kind of products, online type products, that as a side hustle because they need to make ends meet. And it's growing, kind of like what happened for you, Michael, where you started something and then it became your everything kind of idea. So given that you three obviously definitely have the entrepreneurial spirit, what advice would you give to someone who is, stretching out into this new environment of starting their own business?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Kathy. And I saw the way you phrased your question in the chat box too. You specifically asked about, is there seed funding for people who might be in that situation? I would encourage them to enter some of the business plan types of competitions. There are kind of more of those coming in Bakersfield. We have the Startup Weekend, which I think is once or sometimes twice a year, typically hosted at CSUB. I don't have the date in front of me for the next one. I know the Women's Business Conference has now started offering a pitch competition in partnership with Seed Corps and Kern Venture Group. And I think that's been postponed to early spring. But the winner of that competition gets a little bit of seed funding. And then also 59 Days of Code, which Bitwise, Irma helped found that. And they still work very closely with Bitwise. There's a lot of resources and I believe some funding that is awarded to the people there. So there are three that I would encourage people to apply for, depending on what's relevant. And then the last thing I'll leave with is at Kern Venture Group, we actually do have a small portion of our fund that is set aside for grants. And that is not an investment. It's just if someone comes to us with a really good idea, and maybe it's not right for us from an investment, but we want to encourage them and see where they could take something. We do have the ability to give out small grants, and I'm like $1,000 grants, but sometimes $1,000 helps you build that prototype or spend some money on marketing to get to the next level. So people can submit those ideas or reach out to us from our website, and I'll put that in the chat box.
Bitwise as well will take opportunity to invest in ideas and businesses that are that they believe in. And so, yeah, if you have an idea, generally, you know, we are a tech company, so tech focused businesses and startups can definitely reach out to Bitwise as well.
I have two things on this. And the first one is after our conversation, or the conversation I had with JP, he gave me a compliment after the interview was over that I didn't realize the significance of it until later, which was up until that point, JP had been interviewed by all kinds of different news outlets and organizations about the Kern Venture Fund, or Kern Venture Group, excuse me. And the thing that he told me is that, you know, Michael, your program was the first program or the first interview to ask the question, how do you get our money? That's key point number one. If you've got a business that you're trying to get started and you're trying to get the nuts and bolts of finding out what does it take to get investment money? What does it take to get seed money? Selfish plug, listen to our conversation. JP is in my conversation on Small Business Celebration because he tells you what it takes to get seed money from Kern Venture Group. Also, the other grants that he was talking about are also very important. The other thing I wanted to point out is in this time, this is the time to start something new, because for a lot of people, for the new ideas, the bar is actually relatively low. People are very interested in something new, anything that has something moving, something growing. This is the time that you can actually try an idea that you have thrown the mud against the wall 10 years ago and it didn't stick. Well, it just might this time because you have a much wider, much more receptive audience. It's just a matter of finding out who to go talk to. And that's part of the networking thing that JP was talking about, is getting out and talking to people and making those connections, because your idea 10 years ago may not have been the right time, but now it may be. Or the idea that you had wasn't quite ready yet. It needed a little tweak here and there to make it go. But again, this may be the time. And finally, I want to point out an idea that's about 2,000 years old, and it comes from Marcus Aurelius. I know I'm going to bore you guys half to tears on this, but he says in his book, Meditations, we need to eliminate unnecessary assumptions as well to eliminate the unnecessary actions that follow. And what he's talking about in that is, if you've got a main business or you've got a main job, and you're trying to start something new, and you want to start a side hustle, a side project, one of the things that will kill you, literally, is to overpopulate your plate. Have too many things on your plate. Have too much going on. What you need to do, if you're going to be starting a side hustle, you're going to be starting a second business, is being able to discern what's important. And that takes some planning. It takes some thought. It takes some asking, like JP said, go and talk to friends, go and talk to other people. What is it that works, that doesn't work? And go through and make a list of your priorities, because you're not going to be all things to all people at all times. So take that moment to go through and be able to discern what's important, what's not, and execute on those things that do matter, so that you don't get bogged down in the weeds, don't get bogged down in the details of things that just clutter up your plate and give you a premature heart condition.
Michael, one thing that reminds me of is the importance of just writing your ideas down and your goals. It's sounds like a really simple thing, but study after study shows that just by actually writing down what you want to accomplish, those people who do that are much more likely to actually accomplish those things.
And it can be something as simple as, a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. You can also go ahead and do something more fancy and have a planner and being able to put something together. And there's a lot of really great planners out there, really a lot of great things that you can do by manual on paper or digitally. But JP is absolutely right. Put down your goals, put down your vision, where it is that you want to go, what you want to do. If you're a tech company, do you need to contact Megan to find out what they've got going on at Bitwise? Do they have the facilities to help you? That's what you need to be able to find out. And that only happens is if you write down where it is that you want to go, how you want to get there, and start getting into more of the details of the things that you need and the people you need.
That's great advice, you guys. Thank you. Francis, did you have a question?
Yeah, before that, I think there's a question in the chat. What metrics do you use for growth and expansion? What do you use to determine when to buy new equipment, hire more people, or spend more money?
That was mine, and if I could expound a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
What I keep coming back to is everybody's like, well, when you need it. When you okay, if I'm going to spend money, I don't want to do it on a gut feeling or just because I think. So is there somebody who has like a formula or a metric or even just words of wisdom? You spend money to speed up processes or to eliminate bottlenecks or to reduce bottlenecks. What's the metrics that you determine when it's worth it and when it's worth it just to power through with what you have? Does anybody have some advice on that, on what they use?
It's a great question, and that's a question that every business owner has to deal with almost on a daily basis, right? And so I would say that sometimes it's okay to go on gut instinct, but make sure you understand the downside and the risks if you're going to just go on gut instinct, right? So don't bet your family's house on gut instinct, right? Because you need a place to live if you've got other people that are relying on you for that. But what I would say is that you do need to collect the data. Now, what do I mean by data? Data can be, structured, formal data, or it can be a little bit more informal. But most importantly, if you think there's an opportunity to grow your business, you should be able to point to some indicator of demand, right? And so I don't know what business you're in, but what are customers telling you? Are they telling you that they would like to, procure more services from you? Or are you getting more requests for business than you can handle, and so you need more space, or you need more equipment, more manufacturing capacity? So that's the data you need to collect, is what's the demand? The great thing about free market economy is that it allows people to reach out to others and say, hey, I am willing to pay you for something that you can provide me with. And so that's what entrepreneurship and business is all about. So the data is just getting an idea of what the demand is. However you can quantify the demand, that's what you need to be looking for. You've got to get out in front of the customers.
Well, if I gave an example of a decision that I'm trying to make now, would that be? I mean, that was great. Is there a way that I could give an example and then everybody can kind of pitch in?
Sure.
Awesome. So we're a plastics manufacturer. Right now, and I'm actually really happy, we just closed Greenfield Union, and that's easily the biggest job we've had so far on the fabrication side. We're doing barriers for the school desks. Wasn't a lot of demand for that back in February when we started it, and then March happened. So we got kind of lucky there. Or unlucky, however you want to look at it. Right now, we get our material down in LA, and the person who's supplying it at the best price and the quantities we need, they can't cut it to the specs that we need. They just don't have the equipment there. 30 minutes away is another cutter or is a person we've worked with a long time, and they can cut that material, and they do it very fast and precise. And what I'm finding now is we just had this where it was faster because the demand for I need it yesterday was so high. It was faster to send my guy down with his pickup truck, with his souped up pickup, and he took the full sheets on a pallet to the cutter 30 minutes away. And then he's going today to pick it up because we would lose 2 days in ship time if we went freight. We'd lose a day in ship because they just tack it on. Okay, well, it just got in from them. We can worry about that tomorrow. Whereas when he shows up at a pickup, they're like, okay, here, we'll start cutting it now. You know, it's a weird culture thing. I don't know. But then we'd also lose, okay, well, now we need to pack it and we'll ship it on a freight and everybody's happy with one day. This cuts it down. Do I hire this guy or just start getting a better truck? Or do I just start planning to add those extra days? The demand, again, is we need it yesterday. That's what all the demand is.
So I'll give you two thoughts. You know, this is a classic, you know, decision that people are faced with is, you know, do you sort of become vertically integrated and do this step in your process yourself, or is it better to rely on other suppliers? And I think there's two things you need to answer there. One is you can certainly just run the numbers, right, and figure out what's the cost of doing it yourself, and can you pass some of that cost on to your customer? Are they willing to accept a little bit higher price because you're willing to are able to deliver more consistently, you know, in a faster turnaround time? What's that worth to the market? Again, it comes back to what do you think customers will pay for? That's just a financial modeling and pricing and costing exercise that you can do. More importantly, though, I would say you need to think about really what is your mission of your company, and is it critical that you control that step in the process? Because otherwise you can find yourself trying to do everything because you think you might save a few cents here and there. So those are two things to think about. But what I like about your example, and that I think might be beneficial for everyone watching and following along on, is I think you know, I would encourage you to find a mentor who can help you think through things like this. And so that's one of the things that KITE is now offering. We have a number of mentors that are available for free to entrepreneurs in the community, and we will connect you with a mentor. We'll try to line you up with somebody who has maybe relevant industry experience, or might just be a good, you know, business person or former entrepreneur in their own right. And you can find, you can request an entrepreneur through our website, which is gokite.org. And I will put that in the chat box as well. We have a few profiles of just several of our mentors, but we have many more that are not actually listed on the website. So I would encourage everybody who would be interested in having a mentor to reach out to us.
And mine's a little bit different. We're not quite a startup. We're an established plastics company that started a new wing, and I'm heading up that new wing. It's new products that we've, you know, and new materials that we didn't work with before. So quasi startup, you know, with the best and the worst of both of those worlds of the startup and the established business. So
a great resource is the Small Business Development Center at CSUB. That might also be a good fit because they work with established businesses, and they also might be able to help you guys apply for some SBA loans.
Yeah.
Something else that you also might look at, Josh, is if you go to smallbusinesscelebration.com/podcast or go to our YouTube channel, watch our conversation with David Dobbs. He's the owner of Imbibe, and he's had a very successful business for quite some time. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's midway through the second segment. he actually goes through his step-by-step plan on how he does forecasting and how he goes through, and he talks about how he goes through and estimates what his expenses are going to be. And the example that he uses is through charitable giving. How does he go through and know how much wine to give to a particular nonprofit organization for their event and that sort of thing? But he goes through and he actually does a whole process of the very thing that you're talking about and talks about that. Also, check out our conversation with Jerry White. He's the owner of White Forest Nursery, and he also talks about a very similar sort of thing, because when we did our conversation with him, COVID had just hit, and he was just being inundated with all the people that had just gotten their $1,200 checks and were now spending it on their front lawn. And this was a situation he was not prepared for, and yet he still had to work with his vendors and go through and do budget forecasting and figuring out how he could work with his vendors, get his suppliers, and he went through and he talks about that step-by-step process that he used to keep White Forest Nursery from capsizing from too much business so quickly. So this is something, so that's a conversation that you also might want to check out. Also, another conversation that you might want to check out is with Sarah Slayton Price. She is the CEO of Jake's Tex-Mex Cafe, and she actually goes through on what she does on Saturday mornings and how she goes through and puts together those budget forecasts, because most restaurants survive or die on 1% to 2% margin difference. And she goes through in our conversation to talk about how she goes through and cost estimates, where she need to work on for labor, where she need to work on those kinds of things. So those are a couple, 3 episodes that you might want to check out, because these are successful business owners who are doing the very thing that you're asking about.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in? I took everything out of the notes in the chat as well. Thank you. I'm sure between all that, I'll compile it and start digging in there, and we'll come up with an answer that, I can implement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another question in the chat from Aaron. Aaron, would you like to ask it live?
Sure. My question was, what do we think are going to be some of the emerging sectors that are opportunities for entrepreneurs? So things besides energy, ag, construction, and I suppose healthcare.
Well, tech. One of the reasons that Bitwise chose Bakersfield as a location, I know you were talking about like non-Bakersfield, but technology, Bakersfield isn't known for our technology, right? And so Bitwise really highlights the non-traditional non-traditional talent that exists in cities like Bakersfield, where again, ag, huge ag, oil, but we don't have to be only those things. There are people here who desire to make something of themselves under the tech umbrella, and then have felt like they need to move outside of the city to really have a career. And so our goal, our hope is that we can create a tech hub here in town. And as we've seen in this last 7 months, online technology, the ability to reach people virtually has just exploded. And, Bitwise was able to start a couple of new businesses because of this online demand. People were needing, people had just lost their job, lost their ability to leave the home, and needed to find food, find training, find connections. And so Bitwise was able to address those needs and then jump in and develop new technology to help people access food, access training, all of those things. So I'd say that, computer technology is has been incredibly valuable for most people in the last, even, you know, with voting, like you can register to vote online, you know, like, and that's just voting's on my mind. Vote, everybody vote. And so I think that we're very much looking forward to expanding the world of tech here, particularly in Bakersfield. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of talent. It's just, there's not always opportunity. So, you know, we're hoping to bring that.
I think I agree with what Megan is saying. And I think sometimes it's easy to get caught in this thought that, you know, well, a tech company that's sort of its own distinct industry. And what Bitwise has found in Fresno and is finding in all these other communities that they're expanding to is that all of the existing industries usually have a lot of need for tech solutions to support their existing business. And so while we might think, okay, well, all we have is construction or energy and ag and oil and gas, well, yes, but the future tech companies in this town might be ones that develop solutions that work just for those sectors. So how do you look at that? Is that just a tech company and it's a separate industry? Or is it part of those existing industries? And I would say it's a little bit of both, right? Because if that's their initial beachhead, from there they could then grow into other software products or solutions and maybe expand into other industries. So another thing I would add is I'm on the executive committee for a new regional economic development planning initiative called B3K. Don't ask me what the acronym stands for because I always forget. I know Megan's on the steering committees as well. And what we really are focusing in on, and the chamber is a sponsor in this, Francis maybe will help me with the acronym, but what we're really focusing on is identifying what are called new traded sectors. And a traded sector is a company that actually sells their product outside of the area, so outside of Kern County in this case. And so to answer your question, we're really going to be trying to identify a couple of these new industries, and then it will be, I think, an effort to help bring resources and support and maybe tax incentives and policy changes and regulatory changes so that we can be an attractive place for those new companies to locate or to start up. And so stay tuned for that. It'll be probably early spring when you'll start to see some early plans and governance bodies being formed around that effort. And I think along with that is just what I've really been pounding the table for is I think there's an opportunity for Bakersfield to become more of a thought leader in these existing industries because we have a lot of knowledge and talent and a history of innovation and entrepreneurship in these industries. But what we don't have is people, we aren't out there kind of like selling that knowledge or that thought leadership. We don't have like a lot of research and development going on here as a product that we export to other places. And so could a CSUB launch, you know, new innovation centers in some of these areas? Could we attract some other R&D centers from companies that might be in these industries, but they don't do any R&D here in Kern County? I think that's an opportunity as well.
One of the things I want one of the things I wanted to bring up is that we have a wonderful lineup today because as a business owner or business leader, you can go talk to JP and find out, okay, how can I get funded? You can go talk to Megan and find out, how do I get the tech going? But one of the things that we have been focusing on Small Business Celebration is what is the product or service that you can sell online? And that is what this week's guest, Meredith Bell, is all about because she's selling her poultry and her agriculture online and doing it through delivery. But all that is very much a tech business. Yes, she is selling her meat and her vegetables and whatnot online and for home delivery, but it requires tech to make that happen. And last week's guest was with Callie Jenkins. Again, she needed tech in order to sell her services for her Pilates studio. And next week's guest is Chad Tonko with Primaris Market Development. And again, this is a similar theme. These are the kinds of businesses that are starting to develop here in Kern County. So if you're a business owner and you have a traditional brick and mortar business, or you have a service that you're trying to figure out how do you expand outside of the Kern County market, you happen to be in the right place at the right time, whether you realize it or not, because you have the financing that can come in, you've got the tech that can help you get there. Now it's just a matter of taking that crazy idea, like I mentioned, that you had 10 years ago that didn't stick to the wall, tweak a little bit, and maybe now it might work.
Great. Thank you all so much. Are there any other last minute questions before we close up?
Actually, real quick, I just want to highlight that amongst us, we have Zachary Da Silva, who is our youngest entrepreneur member. He started his own business, and I'm sure he can give a little plug as to what that is. But do you guys have, when he was 17, and I think he's like maybe 18.5 right now, do you have any advice for someone young, under 21, looking to start their business? Again, I know you mentioned some of those, but just words of wisdom you'd like to throw at our Zach today.
I've got one that's kind of I'll call it a pet peeve, but maybe not the right phrase, but don't do it all on your own. We see far too many entrepreneurs who have a good idea, they may have the passion, and for whatever reason, I don't know if this is something about Kern County culture or what, but they think that they can do everything themselves, and they seem to be hesitant to bring on other partners into their business. And I'm not just talking about investors. I'm talking about, if you're not good at finance, go find someone who can help you with finance. And maybe for a while they're helping you for free, or they get some small equity in the business. No one can do everything. And there's no, billion-dollar companies of one person. That just doesn't exist. You have to build a team. That's be my number one advice: is don't do it all on your own. Get out there, network, find that next person who's willing to be your co-founder or partner in getting the thing off the ground.
I'm not necessarily an entrepreneur, but I had an entrepreneurial grandfather, and he was a very successful businessman here in Bakersfield. And I learned 5 important values watching him do business. And they were passion, integrity, generosity, cultivating relationships, and education. So number 1, believe in your product and believe in yourself. Passionately communicating your vision is what's really going to help bring people on board. Work hard and with integrity. Be a person of your word. If you say you're going to do it, right? Hold up your end of the bargain. And number 3, this is huge, give back. I know when you're trying to start a business, you're usually looking to get, right? You want to get support, you want to receive funds, investors. But when you demonstrate that you can give of your time and your resources to your community, people will remember that you've been willing to help meet a need. And more than likely, when they can, they'll reciprocate and they'll remember. Networking, we've talked about this already. It's not always what you know, but who you know or who knows you. So the more connections you're able to make and the more relationships you're able to cultivate, the more opportunities you create. And then keep learning. Continue to educate yourself regarding every aspect, not only of your industry, but of your community as well. And I've seen that like lived out in everything about Bitwise as well.
2 things. 1, have a good attorney. 2, have a good insurance agent. 3, have a good CPA. And 4, have a good marketing or salesperson. Shannon Labar, this means you. Or this is a shout out for you, I should say. Every successful business has that quartet of people that they can rely on, these resources that they can go to, because like JP said, you cannot do this alone. The second thing is when you find people that you want to work with, that you know, you like, and you trust, make sure these are people that can do things that you can't do. For example, one of my favorite examples is everybody seems to think that Bill Gates was this super genius who managed to make this mammoth company called Microsoft happen overnight. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when he started and partnered up with this guy by the name of Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates was not yet 21. And back in those days, in order to go ahead and get financing and funding and investors, they were often done in restaurants that served alcohol. And one of the main reasons that he partnered up with Steve Ballmer was so that Bill Gates could sit in the car in the parking lot and wait for the meeting to be over between Steve Ballmer and the investors. Why? Because Steve Ballmer was over 21. So as you go through and you're trying to build your business, your career, regardless of what age you are, you could be 16 and a half, you could be 193. Make sure you reach out and find people whose strengths are greater than your own. Find these people that you know, you like, and you trust, because you could be in business with them for a very, very long time.
I have one more thing, sorry, real quick, an ask. I have an ask from the three of you. You know, we try to communicate as much as we can to our members. Can you keep us in your loop, JP, Michael, when you have a podcast that you think, when you have a program that you think would be of any valuable, send Hillary, Francis, or myself an email. Keeping us in that, you know, keep reminding people of these programs that you have. Megan, once you're open, you know, that just keep your resources in front of us so we can keep them in front of our members. I'd really like to keep that partnership strong.
Absolutely, will do.
Happy to do it.
Hey, thank you all so much, Megan, JP, and Michael, for joining us and speaking with us today. I know you all shared a ton of really, really helpful information. And just to remind everyone, this recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you want to come back and listen again, you forgot something, or you want to share with some of your friends, you can go ahead and do that. I'll send the link out to all of you later today. Just to touch back on the B3K that JP mentioned, that stands for A Better Bakersfield and Boundless Kern. And you can also find more information at b3kprosperity.org. And I put that information in the chat as well. So I'd like to thank all of our sponsors again for promoting and supporting this webinar series. So thank you to Strata Credit Union, Comprehensive Blood and Cancer Center, and Kearney's Business Technology Center. We would not be able to have provided all of these free webinars over the past few months without your support. So we really, really appreciate that. So thank you again to our speakers and all of our attendees who joined us today. And I hope you all have a great week. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.